Is it on? There we go. Okay. Let me begin by thanking all of you, friends and family from near and far, for coming to help us celebrate the wedding of Carson and Chris. Having family and friends together on occasions like this make them all the more enjoyable and memorable. When I first began to plan my remarks, I was a bit daunted because I had been led to believe that the British... She likes to tell me what to do. Sometimes she's right.
I asked her.
Oh, and Carson likes it as well. Okay, let me start over. Thank you. When I first began to plan my remarks, I was a bit daunted because I had been led to believe that the British had raised the art of wedding speech making to a new level, and that speeches needed to be both clever and lengthy, sometimes outrageously funny, and bordering on what we would call in the States a roast. I have since come to understand that these sorts of speeches are reserved for the best men and the groomsmen, and that the father of the bride is not required to subject his daughter to the same degree of ridicule that the groom will be subjected to by his friends. In planning my speech, being somewhat of a student of history, I looked for an historical framework or analogy that would symbolize the strong supportive relationship that the New World and the Old World have enjoyed, that is symbolized by the joining of Carson and Chris. Carson from the American side of the proverbial pond, and Chris from the English side. And of course, since this speech is a little bit more about Carson than Chris, it will be more about the American side of the supporting relationship. Thus, you will forgive any cultural references that may not be immediately discernible. As you no doubt realize, we Americans have stood side by side with our British cousins for many, many years, since the little spat we had at the end of the 18th century over royal tax policy. You lost. There ensued a few rough bumps in the relationship, such as during the 1790s and early 1800s, when the Royal Navy sought to meet its recruitment quota through the impressment of American seamen on the high seas. And then there was that time in 1814 when your soldiers sought to change the color of our presidential residence from white to charcoal. Do we get that reference? The burning of the Capitol. Okay. We don't hold it against you now. Those minor inconveniences have not lessened our support for this special relationship that the United States and the United Kingdom have. Thus, when Brexit reared its ugly head and the UK was faced with economic and political uncertainty, Carson stood by Chris. Her support for Chris did not waver, even after our accountant told us that the value of Chris's bank account and other holdings had diminished significantly. Carson, Dana, and I held a family meeting, and in a great display of American democracy, we held a secret ballot. When the votes were counted, the majority ruled, and we decided to stick with Chris as well. We hearkened back to the dark days of World War II and decided to take our cue from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his Lend-Lease program, which ensured the delivery of crucial war material to the UK during the period of time when the United States had not yet entered the conflict. Dana and I thus decided that as the US had come to the UK's aid then, we would offer, or be prepared to offer, Carson to Chris, and in broader terms to the UK in similar fashion. We were actually thinking more in terms of lending Carson to Chris, but Chris apparently was looking at our offer somewhat differently. One day when Dana and I were visiting Carson and Chris in Los Angeles, at about the time he asked for her hand, Chris presented us with a proof coin set with a face value of £1, 88 pence. Evidently, Chris was thinking more in terms, excuse me, I have to get my place again. It quickly became evident at that point that while Dana and I were thinking in terms of a lending arrangement, he was thinking in terms of a lease. I don't consider myself an expert on the British monetary system, but I do understand that £1, 88 pence is not even worth $3 in real money. So Dana and I concluded that the proof set was not of enough value for anything beyond a short-term lease. So the negotiations continued. I realize that there are some of you who do not know Carson well, or perhaps at all. So I've decided to take some photographs and enlarge them. These were photographs taken when Carson was younger. These were taken at pivotal moments in her life. And this will give you an idea of the young lady that you see before you. Yep. Here we have a picture of one of my, well, maybe you can hear me anyway. No. Here, no, all right. Yeah. Here we have a picture of one of my earliest conversations with Carson on the merits of domestic champagne versus imported, and of the importance of serving good champagne at socially significant events. As you can see, Carson was fully engaged in the conversation, and I'm happy to say eventually decided to spend a semester of her university years in France, learning to appreciate the contributions of France to the art of winemaking in general and champagne in particular. Now living in California, she is eminently qualified to contribute to the age-old discussion of domestic versus imported, which, as no doubt Chris will appreciate, extends to beer as well. As part of her preparation for adulthood, Carson and I discussed the defense of Leningrad during the Second World War, and basically the advantages and disadvantages of conducting an offensive during the winter. Carson, as you can see, took it in. As a result, she is fully prepared and committed to help defend her second home in the event France takes out its anger over Brexit and attacks England at some point during late November to early March.
Instructed by the bride. They can't show you on that side. This side.
We early on instilled in Carson the importance of good communication skills, and in wasting no time in getting in touch with us when there was a looming international crisis or something else to discuss. For context, I explained to her the hotline that was established, that was set up during the Cold War between Washington and Moscow to avoid otherwise unnecessary military confrontation. To help prepare Carson, we got her own phone and began Russian language lessons. This photo was taken during one of the early conversations, and you can tell by the expression on her face that she didn't quite understand the Russian slang that was used in that particular exercise. To her credit, when Chris announced to Carson that he had an important question to ask us, she immediately recalled her training and contacted us. The rest is history. This we call the Harry Potter factor. My guess is that most every young girl imagines her future husband and wishes for her Prince Charming, pondering such things as height, weight, coloring, intelligence, wealth, sense of humor, things that a woman looks for in a man. There are those who dream and imagine, sit, and wait for the Prince Charming to come on his white charger. There are others who take things in hand and adopt a more proactive, energetic approach, cast a spell. Here we see Carson during one of her early husband-to-be incantations. The spell, I think, partially worked. But as I recall, on that particular day, we were lacking the ingredient to ensure that her husband would be a natural-born American citizen. While we were waiting for the magic spell to take effect, and we knew certainly that one day it would, we thought it useful to prepare. Whoops, I got the wrong one. Oh, hold it, Vanna. Yes, this one. I have no one to blame but myself because I arranged them in order, so it's my fault. While we were waiting for the magic spell to take effect, knowing full well that one day it would, we thought it useful to prepare Carson for her eventual marriage. We encouraged her at a young age to get in as much practice as possible. Heeding these recommendations, she went online and offered herself for a modest sum as flower girl, junior bridesmaid, ring bearer, or spousal stand-in at any wedding or wedding rehearsal within a 100-mile radius of our home. Unless, of course, transportation were provided. In that event, we would extend the radius to 250 miles. What you see here is one of her first, albeit non-paying engagements at the wedding of her cousin Lisa. As you can see, Carson has adopted an appropriately serious countenance, and her eyes are directed forward and downward to minimize the likelihood of tripping or stumbling. When Carson started exhibiting a musical talent at a young age, we encouraged its development, as we knew it might someday provide an additional source of income in uncertain times. Carson is fully committed to contributing to the family income and recognizes that this is critically important in this day and age when the full impact of Brexit has yet to be realized. Here we see Carson refining one of the songs she was considering for incorporation into her Broadway show tune repertoire. I believe the song was "You Can't Get a Man with a Gun" from Oklahoma. It was either that or "Whatever Lola Wants, Lola Gets" from Damn Yankees. That's a reference to Broadway show tunes in the United States, so again, you remember I said you might not get some of you, so.
I know them.
I know, you know them, okay. So while Carson may not yet have had an opportunity to tell Chris, she has let us know that she is fully prepared to take a lounge act on the road in the event that it's necessary, and to accompany herself as a solo act in the event backup musicians and singers are not available.
Oh my God.
I subtitled this "Patriotism or the Fashion Benefits of Marrying a Brit." Here we see Carson dressed in red, white, and blue from a photograph that we had made 1 year around the time of our 4th of July. As you may know, the 4th of July is the date of our independence, and should be a constant reminder of what can happen when the quality of your tea is not sufficient to compensate for the taxes placed on it. I'm a tea drinker. A key to the eventual decision Carson made to marry Chris was the fact that the colors of the Union Jack matched those of Old Glory. When Carson realized the colors of the flag were the same, and that she would not have to significantly alter the colors in her wardrobe for the Queen's birthday, the deal was sealed. With complete confidence that we and Chris will reach an appropriate lending arrangement or leasing arrangement, I have turned my thoughts to Carson, her having reached adulthood, and her decision to get married and lead her life with Chris. There's a special feeling that a father has for a daughter, and that is no different with me. I remember well the time when Carson was about 1.5 years old, when I first thought about Carson getting married. A song was playing in the background of my office in our embassy in Burkina Faso by a country group called Alabama, and the song was entitled Never Be One. It's a song that a father is singing to his daughter after her first birthday, as he realizes that she is growing up and will never be one again. Listening, the song struck a responsive, emotional chord, as Carson had recently celebrated her first birthday. And I started to imagine Carson growing up, getting married, and leaving home. I'd like to read the final verse and chorus. The piano is quiet in the hall as Kermit the Frog sits watching it all. Soon your legs will grow and make the tricycle go and take you away from us all. No, you'll never be one again. The twos are tumbling on in. Daddy's little girl is growing up in the world. You'll never be one again. Good night, baby. Good night, Daddy. It brought a tear to my eye then, and it brings a tear to my eye when I recall that song. Carson has been the apple of my eye throughout her life. I've always been proud of her and never ceased to be amazed by the wonderful, caring, talented, gifted, and responsible young lady she has become. I have long since come to terms with the fact that I would lose her one day to some young man, as fathers eventually do. The sadness that I feel, realizing that Carson will never be one, will never be the little girl that I held in my arms, and will live her life apart from Dana and me, is lessened and replaced by the joy that Dana and I feel, knowing that Carson has found Chris, and that he is the one we will entrust Carson's happiness and well-being for the rest of her life. So my remarks end with my thoughts turning to the loss of a daughter who is a remarkable young lady, to the gaining of a son-in-law who is an equally remarkable young man, and their plans for their life together. I raise my glass to Chris and Carson.
Thank you. That's a very civilized way of doing it. I should have contemplated that. Thank you. How are you doing? Everyone enjoy their starter? Yeah. Everyone having a good time? Yeah? Wasn't that a lovely speech? That was genuinely... I had to give my wife a hanky. That was really, really nice. I mean, it's only because she looked to the left and realised what she married. Someone said something really quite hurtful earlier. They go, you look like a young Ricky Gervais. Jesus Christ. The Americans in here will be like, oh, that's really nice. The English will be like, you fat prick. And that doesn't help enhance it. Anywho, we've got a little bit of a unique one here. We don't usually do this one over here, but I guess you guys do over across the pond. We've got the father of the groom, and I'm really glad about that, because he's a tremendous chap. Yeah, I'm picking you up. Yeah, you can pay me in a bit. He's a really nice guy. I've known him for quite a while. I've done some things in this house, but we won't talk about that. Anywho, introducing to you, and make a heck of a lot of noise again, guys, because I think it's a bit quiet. And we have some wine. Let's get a little bit more rowdy. Yeah, a little bit more rowdy. father of the groom, Mr. Peter Gower. Give it up.
Well, hi everyone. Wrong glasses. No, they're fine. Yeah, I've got the great pleasure of being Chris's dad. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. I really want to offer a very warm and heartfelt welcome to everyone in the room, even the waiters and waitresses and the photographers and so on. And I hope sincerely you're enjoying the day as much as Lexi and I and the whole of this table are. It's fantastic, so thank you. I want to place a big shout out to Landon Donovan's Summer Adventure. Guys, you're responsible for this, you realise that. But also everyone who's come across from the USA. It's a great privilege to have you here with us. We hope you have a wonderful time in the UK. And I had written, I really hope the weather's good for you, but
Thank you.
for goodness sake, unbelievable. It's like June and July out there. And it'd be nice to know that you were able to take a few extra days around the UK, and I know one or two of you have been to see HMS Victory and bits and pieces and Blenheim Palace, and we're glad that you're enjoying it. Let's face it, really, it's been a crazy couple of years, hasn't it? In the States, you've got a new president. In the UK, we've voted to leave the European in what we call Brexit. So my only political comment of the day is going to be, what the... But politics aside, let's forget all that. Hang on. Yeah, okay. Pyongyang's still alive. From a family point of view, towards the end of last year, Lexi and I were really thrilled to learn from Maddie and Dan, our daughter and son-in-law, that we were going to be grandparents for the first time, and I hope some of you have met little Arlo. He's lurking around there. He's asleep, get up. The little guy's great and we love him to bits. But also, back in 2016, we were absolutely thrilled and delighted to learn about the engagement of Carson and Chris. So now, just over a year later, their marriage is the most fantastic thrill for us. It really is. And it's been 5 years since you moved to New York, Chris. September 2012. It's where have they gone by? You know, they've flown past. But Lexi and I first met Carson in 2014. And Chris had been Skyping us. Apparently, that's sort of like television for us old guys. And we'd been chatting away, and he said, I'd really like you to meet my new American girlfriend. And, what? And, what the hell are you doing out there? So, and we said, well, strangely enough, we're coming on holiday to Cape Cod. So wouldn't it be a great idea if you came up to see us? So Chris and Carson duly drove up. I think it's about 250 miles from New York, something like that. And we met Carson. And, well, when we met her, she was white-faced, shaking like a leaf. And I said, Carson, there's no real need to be nervous. You know, we're just not. She said, I've just driven 250 miles with this crazy guy. So, some of it was even on the right side of the road. But truly, Carson made a fantastic impression on us. I think, who was the impression of? I can't remember. No. We really loved her from the outset. She was fantastic. She was obviously caring, funny, intelligent, all those great things. And, you know, you sort of knew that she'd found a life partner. And here we are. So that's great. We knew that above all, she made Chris feel really happy, and that made us happy too, didn't it, really? And on top of that, we love New England. I mean, it's a fantastic place. If you get a chance, go. And even you American guys, go there. It's good. The colours are great. No doubt that Seb later on is going to tell you a little bit about the Chris that we know. Well, he knows. But let me tell you a little bit about the Chris that Lexi and I know. Well, we've known Chris for quite a long time, haven't we, love? You were there as well, yeah. I nearly fainted. I first met Chris as he emerged in the arrivals lounge at Stirling Royal Infirmary, and oh God. For those of you who don't know, Stirling is in Scotland, so Chris is actually a Scotsman. At the time, the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics were taking place. And, you know, I just find it amusing that where you live now and all those years ago. I'm not competing. You're not in it, no. You're bloody rubbish. Anyway, no. And it was a new job that had taken Lex and I up to Scotland, and so at the time we'd only been there about 2 weeks. So a new job, a new house, a new country, I suppose, and a new baby, of course, and I think that's what you call a steep learning curve. But we love Scotland very much. It's a wonderful place, very scenic. We lived in quite a scenic part, didn't we? And it was called Bridge of Allan, which is near Scotland. It's near Stirling. Look, here's a picture of. This is the tough bit. Mike's is bigger than mine. Yeah. But yeah. Hey, just this once. Here's a picture of Chris on his first birthday with Lexi. Yeah, I remember that very, very well that day. It was pretty emotional, but yeah, ugly little boy, wasn't he? You know, I don't mean it. It wasn't long after we moved. After there, we moved south to Camberley, where we lived until very recently. But we were only there for a short while, and then we moved to North Yorkshire. This is all related to the job. And we went to live in a place called Stokesley, and I know Cass has been there. And I think it's the place that Chris first called home. I think it's the place you can first remember. We really loved our time in Stokesley. And it was there that we taught Chris to, read and write and things like that. And here's a picture of Christopher. Here's a picture of Christopher with his granddad. This is Lexi's dad, learning to read. And it's at the zoo. So,
I think that was at the zoo. Lovely.
yeah. But that's Grandad Tom, and he died at the age of 95 a couple of years ago. But he learnt reading pretty well, and then it got to writing. But Chris or Christopher is a pretty hard thing to write for a 4-year-old. And so we suggested that you wrote the name Kit, because sometimes we called him Kit. And Kit's easy with all straight lines. And so suddenly Christopher was writing Kit on paintings, and he was writing it in chalk on the pavement, and he was doing really well until one day, and I swear this is true. He came back and he said, "I've written my name on your car," and he'd written Kit with a stone on the bonnet or the hood of our car, and it was a nice, sleek black Ford Capri, and we were really proud of this. And there's about 400 quid to have resprayed or something like that. So we actually didn't bother, but there you go. So that was Christopher and Kit. Well, as you know, Christopher's quite a he was quite a big youngster. He was sort of sturdy of frame, and well, I mean, you can see why, can't you? I mean, but he was also quite a sensitive soul. And look, here's a picture of Christopher being sensitive. It's very reflective, and this is.
Sure, that's not Prince Harry.
It could be Harry. Yeah. There's Meghan, but he had his sensitive moments. But I have to say, it was in his pre-school days that we did notice that there was a tendency to get into scraps or scrapes, little fights. Lex's sister's wedding. Age nearly 3, that's Chris, not the sister, he temporarily halted proceedings as he wrestled another youngster to the ground. I mean, how can you conduct a wedding ceremony when there's mixed martial arts going on over in one side of them? It was chaos. The age of 4 is when people start school generally, and so at 4 years old, Chris went to school in Stokesley, and at 3:30 in the afternoons, all the mums used to stand outside and wait for the kids to come out. And one day, I wasn't there, but one day Christopher emerged from the school with his pal, and as they came out of the door, suddenly there was a flurry of arms and legs and a massive wrestling match on the floor. But the only problem was that the boy in question that you were trying to annihilate, his mother was standing next to Lexi, so things became a bit tense between them for the time. But
the boy did deserve it.
He did deserve it, yeah. Yes. That's my boy. We love that support. But soon after this, the artistic side of Chris took over, and Carson, I really want you to know this. Around this time, Christopher's prowess as a thespian, in the true English style of Olivier Gielgud, Hugh Grant, came to the fore. He's great. No, he's not. And he appeared in the school Christmas pantomime. He took on and mastered the role of a baked bean. A particularly amusing and moving interpretation. And I can tell you, it reduced his parents to tears. Still does thinking about it. But in what would be considered his finest role came the following year in the trendy and off-the-wall version of Dick Whittington, which is a traditional English pantomime. Dick Whittington was the Lord Mayor of London in 16-something, about time when they were finishing this place off. And Chris was cast as a trendy DJ for some reason, sort of a medieval shock jock. And I want to introduce you to a picture of Chris as the DJ Funk Master. And I've been practicing that for about a fortnight, I can tell you. So there's Chris.
I'm seeing similarities.
That's it. But the story behind that is, as the week progressed towards the performance and the rehearsals, we noticed that Christopher was getting more and more nervous and had developed this sort of nervous twitch. And his eyebrows and eyelashes and eyelids would flicker. So we got really concerned about this. And then Lex came up with this wonderful idea. Well, why don't we put him in sunglasses? So, and his adoring public won't know anything different. So the sunglasses went on. The twitch went undetected, and the audience knew nothing about it all. Unfortunately, the downside of wearing sunglasses on stage is that you can't see a thing. So this was followed by Christopher moving around, ploughing into scenery, into people, and of course, causing chaos. The thing was that as it's the panto, that's fine. Everyone does that sort of thing, but it was total carnage. But we love that. But then came the pièce de résistance. There was another final performance. He was in The Pied Piper of Hamelin. The Pied Piper of Hamelin. And here's a picture of Christopher. So he's bottom left, hamming it up with all the other members of the town council and of Hamelin, mincing his way to fame. And that really was the peak of his acting career. His singing voice brought his teacher to tears, if I remember. Miss Mary, I think her name was. She wasn't after that, but that was her name. And mysteriously at that time, Christopher quit the acting career, and that was all over. But 25 years later, will he change his mind, is what I want to know. But I fear the world is a better place without Christopher's feistiness or his actor's life or career. And we'll leave all that for Carson to concentrate, but the concentrated part. But, you know, those memories live long in the mind. I could go on, and there are stories, and plenty of stories about Chris, and the scars are still embedded, but I won't go on. Over the years, Chris has given us immense joy, happiness, and you continue to do so. Lexi and I are very proud of our little boy. But like any other son, there have been moments that are best forgotten, such as the smell that followed him around for days after his annual pilgrimage to the Reading Festival. For those that don't know, Reading is an open-air, long weekend rock festival where everyone goes as a sort of rite of passage as a teenager to get drunk, spaced out, dare I say it, eating... no, you're right, sorry. Eating dodgy food, just being very unpleasant. And of course, this all takes place in the traditional English weather of rain. It turns into a swamp, basically. So going to get Christopher, and after this was all over, was a task that I usually had to say, you know, I'm not feeling very well, Lex. If you go with Sean, to pick up Seb. But that's one of those things. We will also never forget the annual trauma of going to the parents' meetings at school to see if there's been any academic progress. And of course, we knew the answer before we went. And there was the sports stuff. Chris was an enthusiastic defender, as I've been talking earlier on to the guys, at AFC Heatherside. And he was a pretty good swimmer as well, if I remember correctly, but slightly less than talented cricketer. But I forgive you for that, because that's fine. He was a Cub Scout. Look, here's a picture of Chris as a Cub Scout. And you're on this one as well, Seb, so there you are. And he later went on to become a Boy Scout, and they're just going off to camp. There's a dual meaning to that, but I won't go into it. The little guy in the middle is one of our neighbours called Matt Wirt, and Carson and Chris went to Matt's wedding in 2015.
Didn't come here.
And he's now in the FBI, so it's hard to believe that guy there. But no, it's time to draw to a close now. So Chris, we know a new phase of life is just beginning for you. We're so happy that you're going to share it with Carson, who we're now delighted to be able to call our daughter-in-law. She's a wonderful person. She's got equally wonderful parents, a wonderful extended family, and it's been a great pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of days, and Mike and Dana over the past few years. We had a great week with Mike and Dana for the first time of meeting, as well as the kids. I met the kids before, but not Mike and Dana. In Avignon, in France, in 2015. And earlier this year, it was great for us all to meet up at Wedmore, and that's not too far from here where we live now. And we're looking forward to plenty more of these get-togethers. I'm moving to a close now, but I'm deeply conscious that there are some folks that, would love to be here because, but the distance is just a bit too far. Frailty has taken over, and in some cases, they're no longer with us. But we know they're here in spirit, and just take a little thought and think of those guys. Carson and Chris, finally, your big day. Lexi and I wish you every possible happiness together. You make a fantastic and lovely couple. Carson, you look so beautiful. We give you the warmest welcome to our family. Thanks for making our little boy very happy. Our love to you both. Ladies and gentlemen, Carson and Chris.
What do you know? It works. Hello again. How are we doing? Everyone good? Superb. Thank you. It's a big one next. Not that the others haven't been big. The others have been beautiful. But the next one is 50% of the reason why we're all here. It's the lesser 50%. You do the math. Yeah, it's superb to see this guy tie the knot. So I'm delighted to see him very happy. I'm delighted to see him with someone that he is truly happy with. So, without putting this up any further, because I know he's very nervous, heckle him. Ladies and gentlemen, make a load of noise for your groom, Mr. Christopher Gower.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, instant heckle. Impressed. Okay. Well, before we start, or as we start, I wanted to first acknowledge the fact that we have some guests who've traveled a huge distance to be here today. Friends and family have traveled from Oregon, New York, DC, California, Texas, Ohio, and we even have one guest, Peter, who's flown 7,000 miles from Hawaii to be here. And I do want to say to all of you, it's astonishing and just incredibly flattering to think how far you're willing to travel for free healthcare. But seriously, I do want to thank everyone, no matter how far or near you live, for being here with us today. It has been commented that it's actually impressive how we've actually managed to find a place that's been a pain in the arse for everyone, both sides of the wedding, to get to. I know up until recently there was a sizable portion of my group lobbying for a last-minute destination change to Camberley Arena Leisure Centre. Yeah, they just didn't have the space. But regardless of where you've travelled from, it's just incredibly special to both Carson and I that you are all here today. So I want to kick off, there's going to be a lot of these, I want to kick off with an early cheers to you all for being in front of us today, and thank you for sharing this moment. Need that. Okay. So I should probably mention the reason we're here today, which I'm sure you're all aware, but I am married, which above all is just a huge relief. Quite frankly. The reason I say that is that, as most of my friends will probably tell you, I've always been pretty crap with the opposite sex. So basically, as far back as I can remember, I've been prone to saying the wrong thing, and I know that Dom definitely knows that. Not with him. He got married and everything now. Really ruined that one. Or just generally being less than cool about the whole wooing process. Calling it wooing, part of the problem. As an example and a sign of things to come, I'd probably refer to a moment when I was about 8 years old. And if it wasn't obvious, the fact that I'm using this in my wedding speech, it really stuck with me. At the time, I was suffering from a pretty nasty case of tonsillitis. I'd taken the day off school, and my mum had taken me to the doctors, who, after surveying the state of decay in the back of my throat, told me they'd have to give me a tonsillectomy, so complete removal of my tonsils. So Mum and I left the doctors, and upon arriving home, I saw a girl that I really liked across the street. Sorry, Carson. She was just getting home from school. Her name was Helen. Not that, it sticks with me. But yeah, she was 9. So I was aiming high. Yeah, I know. Mature woman. Yeah. She saw us and immediately shouted across to me to ask why I wasn't in school that day. I was kind of pretty flustered about the fact that she hadn't noticed that I'd been there, which in hindsight, because we lived in a northern village where teachers generally outnumbered the students, wasn't that surprising. But I found it incredibly flattering and terrifying at the same time. So I was trying to maintain my composure while also wanting to appear just like tough and pretty cool. I wanted to tell her about the potential surgery that I was about to endure. "I'm actually pretty sick," I shouted. "The doctor says if it gets any worse, a surgeon will have to remove my lungs." Yeah, clearly I meant to say tonsils, but even at that young age and desperate to impress, I knew that removal of one's lungs by a medical professional or otherwise was not survivable. But I didn't realize that I'd said that, and as a result was a little disappointed she looked more quizzical than anything else, particularly as her dad just ushered her inside immediately. It only sank in that I'd announced that the local doctor had recommended euthanasia as a cure for a sore throat when I walked in the front door to be greeted by my mum and her oft-recited comment, "You stupid boy." Despite everything though, my awkwardness, my lack of chill, my obvious lack of knowledge about basic human anatomy, thankfully none of it matters to Carson, mainly because, let's be honest, I'm saying it in an English accent. It's a factor. On the subject of Carson, and I know this sounds cliche, but since the moment I met her, I knew that she was the one. I didn't tell her that because, of course, basic dating etiquette dictates if you tell someone they're the one the first time you meet them, they think you're a complete lunatic. But by some staggering combination of luck, of fate and coincidence that I'm not entirely sure what I did to deserve, she actually thought the very same thing. And as a result, the last 4 years with this complete lunatic have been the best of my life. Let's talk about when we met. When we met, which was in our respective football or soccer teams, soccer teams, I can't say it. Soccer teams, with our respective soccer teams, I should say. I'll be honest, we were both buoyed by a couple of pictures of that fine American brew, Bud Light, and probably a few picklebacks as well. And I do remember the next day thinking, there's no way she can be as amazing as I remember. And a few days later, we went on a proper date, and for once, I was astounded that alcohol had not impaired my memory one bit. Carson was and is the most incredible person I've ever met. Bypassing the obvious beauty, which speaks for itself, she is incredible, she's warm-hearted, she's absolutely hilarious. No pressure for your speech coming up. She's filled with absolutely boundless energy, based on 8 hours of sleep every single night, but
More.
Minor caveat. She's compassionate, she's empathetic, she's intelligent, which I No, I thought I wrote that twice. Deserves to be written twice. Not great at whistling, but she is quite possibly, most of all...
A really good whistler.
Yeah.
Really good.
It's average. She finds me very, very funny. And I should probably add, before anyone else shouts it out, she's a better footballer than me. Yeah. Yeah. I'm savaging your speech right here. I've been Seb, good night. No, I'm surprised no one heckled me with it, but on top of all that, her joy for life and her positivity is truly infectious. And even though I am still a cynical bastard, I'm only half as cynical as I was when I met you. Still as much of a bastard, but... But on that note, I would like to raise a glass to my beautiful wife with my free hand, which feels amazing to finally say. Carson, you do look absolutely incredible today. And I wrote this beforehand, but seeing you today, I mean, I crumbled, I'll be honest. You have made me happier than I could have ever possibly thought. You make me a better person. And you make every day that much better. I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with you, adventuring, exploring, and laughing with you. So cheers. I should probably sing this. I would also like to thank Carson's parents, Mike and Dana, as since day one, their generosity and their warmth has been astounding. And in fact, that applies to the whole extended family. I remember when Carson first told me we were going to meet the parents. Basically, I've never been more terrified. And that wasn't just the prospect of a 4-hour night bus. That was the actual meeting process, to the point where I actually cancelled the dry January a week in, which I probably would have done anyway. No, I was so nervous at the prospect of meeting them that I did cancel that. And partly because I knew something that I needed something to calm the nerves, and partly because I knew there was no way that I could possibly turn up on the arm of your only child and announce that, particularly as a Brit, I didn't drink beer. Since meeting Mike and discovering his absolute devout love for Belgian beer, I think that possibly was the best move I've ever made in my entire life. The first trip was thankfully a really big success. We went back for a second time a few months later, again taking the overnight bus to DC. Pretty cheap when it comes to transport, let's be honest. There is a train, but I mean, who needs that? It's like more than $20. So we turned up in the dead of night at Mike and Dana's, and they'd both fallen asleep. We tiptoed in through the front door, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a glass of beer that Mike had actually left out for me on the floor just at the top of the stairs. And it was at that point that I knew that I'd finally been accepted, at least on the very same level as the family cats.
We love those cats.
I do love the cats. And you guys do too. So I would like to raise a glass to Mike and Dana, without whom this wedding would not be possible, partly because without both of you, there'd be no one for me to marry. But also because you've been so kind, so supportive, and you made me feel like one of the family since day one. Thank you. Cheers. God. On the subject of parents, because there are two sets, I do want to thank my own, quite simply for being the best that I could hope for. Mum and Dad are the funniest, most supportive and encouraging parents, and by extension, my sister Maddie and my brother-in-law Dan are just the best sibling and sibling-in-law that I could. Maddie didn't mention me in her speech, so I just really wanted to get that in there. There honestly are not enough superlatives for all four of you, and the little one too. I know moving to New York was not the easiest thing for any of you, mind you, nor was the year I chose to live in Bracknell. But throughout the entire process, you supported me and you allowed the decision to be my own. I still remember the first thing that my mum said to me when I told her I'd been granted a visa to work in New York. She said, "Whatever you do, just do not fall in love and marry an American girl." I promise this isn't just me rebelling. I promise. It's fine. Mum officially told Carson in the south of France after a bottle and a half of Merlot that if I was going to marry an American girl, she couldn't dream of anyone more perfect for me than Carson, and I couldn't agree more. This is the last piece of paper. Okay. But seriously, I want to raise a glass to my parents, Peter and Lexi, for truly being the most supportive, funny family unit that I love both so very much. Cheers. Okay. Finally, there have been a lot of big changes this year, both good and bad. There are those who are able to join us that we did not expect to be present when we first got engaged, like my beautiful nephew Arlo. Sadly, there are also those who are not able to be with us today. So I do want everyone to think of that person that can't be here today and raise a glass to those who cannot be with us physically, whether for good or bad reasons, but who are in our thoughts. We love you, we wish you could be here, and we miss you terribly. Okay, cool. That's my bit done. Didn't cock it up. And next up is my best man, Seb. Yeah, that's actually, we should. No. I got. Yeah. Not quite yet. Yeah. I'll clap twice when you have to stand up. Yeah. I've known Seb since I was 10 years old. We became friends on our very first day at school when the teacher realized that no one in Surrey could understand him because he just moved from Croatia, and no one could understand me because I just moved from North Yorkshire. These are two accents utterly incompatible with the home counties of England. As a result, we spent the first few months of our friendship with him swapping out every noun with how you say, which, I'll be honest, made each and every sentence he uttered a complete riddle. And me with a northern accent so thick that Seb either thought his new English friend was deaf, or that the broad Yorkshire tones coming out of my mouth was the result of me only bothering to learn the vowels in the alphabet. That's the foundation of a truly great friendship. So I've warned most of the American contingent that the British best man speech is more like a roast than a fond retelling of a long and storied relationship between two good friends. And I wrote this saying, looking at the glee on Seb's little face, but he's in between glee and fear. So I can tell he's not going to go easy on me. I've seen that look only a few times before and it's never ended well for me. For those of you who don't know Seb, before you take anything he says as gospel truth, this is a man who at 14 years old told me he was due for another growth spurt at any time now. I will leave you with that thought.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, brilliant. First of all, thanks for introducing me and for stealing half my speech. So, yeah, great. To Mike and Peter, thanks for setting the bar quite high. I was nervous to start with. Now I'm a little bit more nervous, but let's start. Chris introduced me, but for those who don't know me, my name's Seb, and I've had the privilege of being Chris's best man today. When Chris first asked me to be best man, I was genuinely honoured and humbled to play such an important part in Chris and Carson's big day. This is pretty much the highest honour your friend could bestow upon you, I think. A bit close. Yeah. But to be honest, I was also slightly surprised. Couple of reasons really. First, obviously, Chris is a popular guy. He has many long and important friendships. But what really surprised me is that he's got first-hand experience of seeing me actually perform a best man's role, basically. Amongst some of the mishaps included misplacing, temporarily losing the wedding rings at a particularly crucial time. The bride was walking down the aisle. I didn't have the rings. They were on the floor. They weren't where they were supposed to be. But it turned out to be okay because the happy couple are still there and they're still married. Hey! So, yeah. It all works out for the best. So the way I look at it, obviously must mean a lot to him, which is nice. But I also can't help but think that it may be a reflection on his wider friendship group that after all that, I was still the best choice. So yeah, an early laugh, yes, cashback. for those of you who haven't been best man or are unaware of what the duties hold, it's a it's a privilege to do it, but you have a fair few jobs and responsibilities. It was my job to get him to the venue on time. Tick. Stop him from having a panic attack. For those of you who know Chris, he has a few of those every now and again. We did our best. Looking after the rings. It is a job that looks that is more complicated than it sounds, but as you all witnessed the transaction earlier, flawless. Yeah, and they're on his ring. Show him. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Great. And also prior to all this, it was also my job to organise a suitable send-off into married life for Chris by organising his stag or bachelor party, as you guys call it as well. So a couple of weeks ago now, it seems like a lifetime ago. A couple of weeks ago, Chris's stag do was held in the ever-entertaining New Orleans. Yeah. Exactly right. For those of you who don't know it, it is a place known for its food, party atmosphere, relaxed lifestyle and whatnot, but it also holds the accolade of being the US murder capital for 2011. So, with some trepidation, we packed our bags and off we went. We all had a great time. I won't bore you with the stories. I won't talk about the broken window, the broken bed, the multiple panic attacks, the dentist chair, or Bending's draft excluder. But that's an in-joke, thankfully. But I can happily say everyone came back in one piece. No one was murdered. And everyone in attendance was in terrific form. And I hope they did give Chris the send-off to remember. So from me, thank you guys for making it a great occasion. Hopefully you felt the same. Yeah, good. So after ticking some of those important best man jobs, it's finally my last duty to, I guess, perform this speech. It's not been an easy task to write an equally touching, funny and inspirational speech that will also put Chris through probably the most uncomfortable 10 minutes of his life. I know what you're all thinking. There's a joke here about the wedding night, isn't there? You're all thinking it. I'm not going to go there. I'm better than that. But you can all think it. You're thinking it. I would like to start the speech proper, I guess, by acknowledging why we, friends and strangers alike, are gathered here today. And that is to celebrate the wedding of two people who, in one way or another, are very dear to each of our hearts. I'm, of course, talking about the wonderful, the beautiful, new Mr. and Mrs. Gower. Now, this is a controversial bit. I thought there was going to be bridesmaids. So, I guess this comes from the heart, not from the internet. This is the bit that I was supposed to thank the bridesmaids on behalf of Chris, but I would like to thank everyone on behalf of Chris and Carson for making today what it is. Can I also say to everyone, you all scrub up well, you've all done a great job. Not only today, but onto the lead up of this great occasion, who have helped and supported Chris and Carson on, making this a really great day. So everyone looks truly fantastic, but you're only rightly outshunned by the beautiful bride, Carson, who looks radiant in her stunning dress. It's nice, isn't it? Good, isn't it? It's time to get on to the comfortable bit, I guess. And we're better than start at the beginning. You stole my thunder a little bit. We're talking about the school days, but here we go. Chris and I, as he mentioned, we met in late summer of 1994. Great time. The World Cup in the USA had just finished. Kids across the world were fighting tooth and nail over shiny Panini stickers. And Wet, Wet, Wet were dominant in the UK charts with Love Is All Around You, which I believe is a contender for the first dance tonight, but we'll see. You love it, yeah. We were both new in school, we were both from foreign lands, as he mentioned, again, stealing from my speech. Me from Croatia and him from Yorkshire. We bonded over terrible haircuts, mine from supercuts, and, well, Chris was just ginger, and that was unfortunate. And our terrible accents. And obviously the evident realisation that without being able to have curtain haircut, we're never going to be able to be one of the cool kids. Obviously, Exhibit A. The years flew by, and so did the terrible haircuts, the poor girlfriend choices, the ridiculous clothes and hobbies. Believe it or not, at one point Chris tried to pass himself off as a skateboarder. It gets better. He also tried to be a punk. I know, it's brilliant. This sort of writes itself after this. But we stood, as all good friends do, we stood by each other's side for all these phases. Though we would have probably hoped to have more girlfriends and less terrible haircuts throughout the times. So, as you can imagine, I've known Chris for the best part of 23 years, and I've a huge amount of entertaining and embarrassing stories about him. Huh? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No. I mean, I could tell you about the time he nearly got run over by a milk float that was doing 3 miles an hour when he was trying to be Neo from The Matrix. Yeah, true story. All the time he got sacked from Pizza Hut for him eating the customers' food. All the time he got sacked from at the local hospital for eating the patient's food. Chris genuinely ate food from a sick person. You need to know this sort of stuff. Yeah. But, or possibly the time we put laxatives in 90% of the drinks at our house party. We were both at fault for that. It had dire consequences for other guests. And also the porcelain at that guy's house, yeah. God, that got a test. Oh, you'll like this, Peter. Do you remember the time he drove your Land Rover for 200 miles with the handbrake up?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You're quite fond of that car, weren't you? Yeah.
800 quid.
It's a bargain. Next page. There is more. Or possibly the time he left a particularly unsavoury image on the family computer, only for his 8-year-old sister to find it. Oh my God. Anyway. That's as worse as it gets. Well, I think. But obviously, as time went on, so did we. I moved to the English Riviera, obviously known as Southampton. For anyone that's been there, a lovely place. And not long after, Chris was given the opportunity, as you all know, to move to New York City. There's a few of us in this room that were equally envious of the opportunity, but also quite worried, really. For those of you that know Chris, or those who don't know Chris actually, he used to get lost in Camberley, the small town he lived in for the last 10 years, a lot. He didn't like crowds, he really didn't like crowds. If you used to take him to a market or something, he'd have a panic attack. So, you know, as he announced the news, no one really had a heart to tell him that New York City had a population of 8.5 million people in a quite congested area. But anyway, undeterred, he packed his bags and selfie sticks and off he went. He loves a selfie stick. He did. And apart from renting a flat in his first week from a convicted drug dealer, whose apartment had recently been raided by New York City Police Department, everything seemed to be looking good for Chris. Even chances on walking around New York City and taking photos and videos during Hurricane Sandy, which, for those of you that don't know, is one of the biggest disasters in New York City's history, but Chris decided to walk around and take photos. Now you all know why we're all worried. Well, anyway, he seemed to make a good group of friends, which obviously within testament they're all scattered around here today. And he was even back to playing football or soccer. He wasn't put off after the last time he played, where he headed his own player's forehead rather than the ball. So you've got to admire his enthusiasm. And well, thankfully for all of us, that he did carry on with the football, because it was through his football social that he met Carson. And a budding relationship began. So, suitably impressed with his mistimed tackles and passes, Carson made her move. This is how he tells it anyway. And why let the truth get in the way of a good story, eh? So begun a budding relationship. Now, people obviously meet all the time, they date, and whatnot, but how do you actually know that this person's the one for you? Now, I don't know what it was for Chris, but after he told me a story, I thought, do you know what? She's probably a keeper. I may have embellished in this one, but it's funnier this way. So, anyway, how he tells it, or I remember it, very early in the relationship, Chris and Carson, I think they'd only known each other for a couple of weeks, probably, maybe less, I don't know. And, you know, Chris had gone actually a bit cold on Carson. She had messaged him, they were trying to arrange meetings and whatnot, and you looking surprised here? No. This is definitely true, isn't it? You know, I'd imagine she would have been like, I thought this guy was keen on me. I'm much, you know, he's definitely punching. Why is he not contacting me? So he was trying to find excuses not to meet that week and delaying another day. But obviously, the people that know Carson, she was not going to take no for an answer. And she went to confront Chris. What's going on? And she went to his apartment. Now I know what you're all thinking after a week or two of knowing each other. How did she know where his apartment was? She must have looked up somewhere. I don't know. Well, anyway, so she knocked on the door until the sheepish Chris answered the door and let her in. First thing I think she must have noticed was the shuffling and him not walking very well. And after probing him a bit further, not letting Chris off the hook, he eventually had enough. This is where it gets good. And he confessed that the reason he was putting off meeting her was that he actually, it wasn't because he was flu or he was really, really busy. It's actually because he had a massive abscess. Do you want to tell him? On his arse. Yeah, don't we all? And obviously, he was very much embarrassed to tell her. And he's probably more embarrassed me telling you all about it. There's a redeeming feature in this. I'm getting to it. So this is I just think, thankfully, we've all finished under this dessert, isn't there? Sorry. Maybe tell him not to bother for a few minutes. So yeah, he was really embarrassed to tell her. Now, I don't know. All of us have been in early relationships and whatnot, and a couple of weeks into fledgling relationship, that would have probably been it. Not only had he lied, but he also had a massive abscess on his arse. But not for Carson. She'd come over to check how he was doing, make sure he was okay, and you know that everything was all right. She also brought some soup over, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. But to be honest, Carson, you're probably better off bringing a rubber ring for him to sit on.
Any hot compresses involved?
All that, yeah.
That's later.
Yeah. Chicken soup wouldn't have even touched the sides. But the point is, the thought was there. And that to me is a mark of the woman. She could have easily, I've written blown off Chris here, but that's not what I mean. She could have easily got rid of Chris. He lied to her, terrible excuses. She's much too good for him anyway. But no, she was determined. She wanted to make sure that he was okay, that she looked after him, and eventually, obviously, he was honest with her. And I think that actually speaks volumes for her and for him. And, you know, that's a great abscess or not. Actually, she loves him even for his abscess. No? Well, come on, that's true love. It's not going to work. You've still got it. Oh, I thought you said you still got it. Sorry. So, well, there you go. I thought I'd entertain. Back to Chris and I was looking at, you know, how to kind of define our friendship and whatnot, and I did steal this bit off the internet, to be honest. A much wiser man and a better man than me, called Muhammad Ali, once said about friendship. He said, "Friendship's the hardest thing in the world to explain. It's not something you learn in school." We definitely learned nothing in school. But if you learn the meaning of friendship, you really haven't learned anything. And for me, friendship is being able to stand up here today with my hand on my heart and tell Carson that she's married a great man that I've spent some of the best times of my life with, and I did steal this from the internet, and that she's lucky to experience a fraction of what I have, then she's in for a long and happy life. So, yeah. That's good, isn't it? Go up, I'm not done. Yeah. Is it your answer? Is it that? And with that, can I ask you, dear guests, to please raise your asses and your glasses. That means stand up. As I propose a toast to the bride and groom, may today be the beginning of a wonderful new and long-lasting chapter in their lives, and may they always love, honour and cherish each other, just as they do today. To Chris and Carson. Thank God for that.
It's a very sweaty microphone.
Thank you.
What happens with this? It's a very sweaty microphone in hand.
I'll look up.
Everyone. Hi. I've heard the British tradition is that only men give wedding toasts, but after meeting a few of Chris's groomsmen, I thought the dinner could use an intelligible speech. My name is Alex Matthews. As you've heard, Carson and I have known each other for a long time, about 12 years. We met our first week of college and immediately realized we have a lot in common. Our dads work together, we share the same birthday, and we are both extremely prone to urinary tract infections. We had so many great times during those college years, back when Carson still ate gluten. None of our friends will ever forget Carson's love of quesadilla night at the dining hall. She and her roommate Hannah would arrive at 4:45 p.m. on the dot every Wednesday, and what followed was like watching a nature documentary of hyenas scavenging for antelope carcasses on the Serengeti. Seriously, she was a delightful dining companion, even with refried beans running down her arms. Carson is an only child and is very close with her wonderful parents, Mike and Dana, who she loves spending quality time with. When visiting them in Virginia, Carson has been known to wake up early to accompany them to their morning boot camp exercise class, where she sleeps in the car while they work out and then wakes up to join them for brunch afterwards. As you all know, Carson and Chris met playing on a soccer or football team for young singles in New York City, which sounds a lot sadder than it actually is. I'm not sure what position they each played, but it's safe to say they both scored that spring. Since they started dating, people have been telling Carson and Chris they look alike, which Carson hates. I tell her not to worry, the resemblance is not that strong. Plus, no one has ever accused her of being a ginger. I remember the first time Carson told me about Chris very clearly. We were having brunch in New York, and after a dozen mimosas, she was telling me about this dreamy British guy she had been seeing. At the time, he was back in the UK for vacation and had left Carson a series of voice recordings when he was out drinking with his mates the previous night. Which naturally Carson played for me. We were a little concerned to hear his friends in the background calling him all mouth and no trousers. What are these guys into, we thought. But then we figured out that just means all talk and no action, which made sense. Anyway, I immediately liked Chris more than any of the men Carson had dated in New York or anywhere. Lucky for Chris, because to quote iconic British philosophers, if you want to be my lover, you gotta get with my friends. Things progressed well, and after several years in New York together, they moved to LA, where they live in the Valley, and Carson works hard on her non-porn acting career. And Chris flies drones over the Hollywood Hills on the weekends. I love Carson because she is kind, funny, and doesn't take crap from anyone. Just ask the rude New York City waiter who, after serving Carson and her friends, received a long note on the back of a check explaining that he is getting a generous tip even though our service was horrible and he should be ashamed of himself for his incredibly rude and disrespectful attitude because Carson has worked in the service industry and understands the struggle. Much like a bartending Mother Teresa. One of the things I admire most about Carson and Chris as a couple, besides the way their delicate digestive systems have learned to process chia seeds since moving to LA, is their enthusiasm for life. These two are up for anything and always seem to have a good time. In fact, whenever confronted with something I don't feel like doing, I try to ask myself, what would Carson and Chris do? Then I'd remember I don't want a colonic. And so please raise a glass to Carson and Ginger. May you be gobsmacked with a lifetime of happiness, health, and love. Cheers.
Wow. Now, Seb, not being funny, mate, your speech was good, but damn, Alex just tore the arse off it. And in about 15 minutes less time as well. Holy crap, that was good. Next up, we have Anna. I'm looking around because, hello. Anna went to college with Carson, which means she is going to have all the dirt. I'm not sure that's possible after Alex, but, you know, over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Hi there. So obviously Alex was a very hard act to follow. That was extremely good. And mine is not quite as clever as the ones we've heard tonight, but as Alex, not to be confused with the previous Alex, just mentioned, I went to Sewanee with Carson. We were roommates all 4 years, and the first time that we met was the weekend that we moved into college. And my parents who are back there, and Carson's parents, Mike and Dana, moved us into our dorm rooms in the 100-degree heat. We were all sweating. Carson and I were sweating sitting on our dorm room beds as our parents lugged all of our luggage up the stairs and into our rooms. And from there on, truly, Carson was like family to me as we did everything together and were virtually inseparable throughout the entire time that we went to college. I should also mention that I probably would not have graduated from college if it had not been for Carson, because I was forced to take a language class, which was French, and languages do not come easy to me. So Carson tutored me through all those difficult French classes. Many years later, we studied abroad in France together. So again, Carson sort of drug me along the journey and translated for me the entire time we were there. And we actually headed over across the pond a few weeks early because Mike and my dad had planned a European adventure for us, which was one that I will never forget. Our senior year, we lived in an apartment together, and we took in stray cats. And those cats are, to this day, the family pets of Mike and Dana. And they still have them, which are really fun to see when I visit. So they're going to give them back. So I do want to say that upon learning that Carson had met Chris, we had all sort of been texting about this, and I was very excited to meet him. And I remember the first time that I went to New York and stayed with them, I immediately realized that they truly complement each other more than I could have ever expected, and both have just a very sincere artistic ability. And I know that maybe not everyone would think that about Chris, but Chris is truly artistic, and his photography and videography has been something super special, and helps us like get to see what's going on with him and Carson's lives, which we really appreciate. That same weekend, we went and visited Carson's parents on that same night bus. And I remember when we got to Carson's house, I asked Mike and Dana what they thought of Chris, and they said, "He is truly an angel sent from the heavens." And Carson always gets annoyed when we retell that story, because it sort of implies that she's very lucky to have Chris having fallen in love with her. And she is. And we are all so thankful that Chris is here. I want to end by saying that when Chris planned the proposal to ask Carson to marry him, he looped in several of our friends, and this was something that we had all been communicating about weeks and weeks ahead of time, and something that we were so looking forward to. And Chris coordinated several of our friends flying across the country to be in Portland at Abby and Tab's house, waiting to surprise Carson when they got in from this proposal road trip. And it was magical and wonderful, and Chris was filming and I was filming, and we have lots of memories from that trip. But we were so happy to be there to celebrate with you then, and we couldn't be more happy to be here now to celebrate with you, and look forward to all the wonderful things that are to come for both of you. Love you guys.
In America, I guess this is something you guys are used to. Why are you laughing? That's not even funny. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you? It's like a fat Gervais. Do the dance from The Office. Bollocks. I said I wasn't going to swear, that went wrong. The last speech is a very special one. It's not one we have over here. I'm really very honored to be introducing it. When I was very fortunate to be taken out to New York by my then girlfriend and my wife Sarah, and she stood me at Terminal 3 and said, "Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Stavanger? Where the fuck's Stavanger? Do you want to go to Ireland? No, we go to Ireland." And then Newark was one of the places up on the departures board, which obviously is New Jersey, which keeps in my themes of going into places beginning with new, being New York, New Orleans, and New Jersey. So we went and saw Gower, and we visited Gower and Chris and Carson as well. Have I been drinking? It was going so well. And we were one of the first couples to go out and meet Carson, and it was amazing. They'd only been together for a little bit of time, and she sat me down. We had brunch together, which is an amazing concept. You guys do it so well, because it's like sit down for 2 hours and eat all the meat you can and drink until you bleed out your eyeballs. Jesus God, you guys do it well. And she sat down and she goes, "Eat this steak, it's fantastic. Drink this alcohol, it's amazing." I'm like, Jesus God, you guys should get married. So here we are. Couple of years later, and wow, you got married. So this is the last time you're going to make a lot of noise from my request. Please make the most noise you possibly can. Stand up, just go. I'm going to swear, I'm looking at my wife. She said, "No, go batshit mental." Carson Gower, your wife, your bride, let her rip.
Hi, guys. So yeah, traditionally women don't speak, like Alex said, which is absurd. So I thought I would take the microphone and make this whole speech about feminism before I knew Alex was going to talk. So now we have lots of women representing. It's even, right? Even, equality. But really, I wanted to speak because I knew everybody would focus on the humor, and I just wanted to be heartfelt and really express my gratitude. And I didn't write anything because I've had no emotions all week. I've been dead inside from stress and anxiety, so I just kept not writing. And I didn't. I wrote down some stuff like a couple minutes ago. Because now I feel emotion. It hit me when I was walking down the aisle. And we had an argument about where to get married, kind of. I feel like it was a couple months of argument before we even got engaged. Yeah, it was like long before we got engaged. Argument, talks, discussions. England versus the US. And I wanted to get married in the US. You wanted to get married in England. My reasoning was because I wanted good weather. And I said, it's going to be shitty if we do it here, but you proved me wrong. But the main reason wasn't weather. It was that I was worried everyone I love wouldn't be able to come over here. And I am astounded by you guys' ability to travel so far, and I'm so grateful. And I look around this room and I cannot believe I love every single one of you. Like wedding planning is not the most fun. I love, like anyone who knows me, I love Pinterest, I love details, and this looks amazing. Thank you for them doing this. It wasn't me, but I thought I would love it, and it's been really stressful, and I get why people elope, but it wasn't it wasn't about that for us, because we celebrate our love daily. It's a constant adventure with you. It's beautiful every single day. It's wonderful, and it wasn't about eloping for us. We wanted to celebrate with every single one of you. Our love is reflected in each of you, and our friendships with you and the way that you support us, and you're incredible, and I can't imagine my life without any of you, which is why you're here. And I just had to express the gratitude, which is why I'm speaking now. Family, yep, okay. Yeah, so friends. Oh, I just have to give a quick shout out to my friend Allie, who has designed a lot of this stuff. She was a graphic design major, and she made the menus and the table cards and the invitations, and yeah, just a shout out to her. I have to just give a shout out to both sides of the family for dealing with me these past couple weeks. Every time I called my parents, it was when I was in tears and they couldn't understand me. Stuff kept going wrong. And when we got here, Maddie, Dan, you guys ran so many errands for us, and we could not have done it without you. And I am so grateful. I am, as you guys know, very, very close with my parents. And now I get two new in-law parents that I really, really like, and they like each other, and that's so rare, and we go on vacation together, and I am incredibly grateful. They're not here, but I get a new sister, which I've been an only child, and I've always wanted a sister. Oh, she's there. Yay. And then there's Chris. You think that wedding planning is about the woman, because that's what I was told. And it is, but he has been an equal part in this entire thing. He's done half of this. And I literally, besides just I physically couldn't have done it, I emotionally couldn't have done it. He knows how to calm me down. And I hated that we had to spend last night apart because I was not doing well. And I mean, there are no words. Anyone who knew me in New York during the time when I met him, actually, I heard him first. That joke wasn't a lie. Like, I heard his accent, and I was like, who is that? Oh, he's cute. And then started calling him my boyfriend before I think I even knew his name. I told Patty, I was like, how's my boyfriend doing? Figured, like, yeah, 2 weeks. And then now he's my husband. So that wasn't creepy at all. am so excited to spend the rest of my life with you, and you balance me completely. You are my other half. There are no words. I knew, and anyone who talked to me during that point, because I had fun in New York. I dated a couple people, and they'd be like, "Oh, who's this boy?" And I was like, "This one's different." And I knew. Anyone who talked to me during that time period can tell you, I knew that within that first meeting. I knew it was different and special, and I'm glad I wasn't wrong, and that we're here now, because everyone would have made fun of me. So why I'm talking, I tried to make that fast, is this is over. All I want to do is dance. I love dancing. Most of you know. If you want to hang out with me, you have to be on the dance floor with me. We're going to be real quick. These glasses have to stay here, so chug your drink, everybody. We're going to cut the cake real fast, and then we're going to go dance. It's a Motown band, and I'm super excited about it. And I love you all, and thank you all. And, oh yeah, Mary and Roger made the cake, and it is beautiful. Or Mary made it, but they're over there. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. We're gonna cut it, and we're gonna be super fast, and then everybody head to the stables. Leave your glasses here, and thank you so much.